Welcome to the Tim Castle Show, where I sit down with courageous individuals doing inspirational things around the world. Whether it's AI, crypto, mindset, leadership, negotiation and sales, I've got you covered. I sit at that nexus of disruption and change. I'm loving every second of this. I really do believe this is the most abundant time that we've lived in. And if we harness what's going on correctly, we can build businesses that are going to transform our future and your lives. So come with me on this journey, meet the people. I pull back the curtain, I find out who they really are. I started off building this podcast for my sons as something they could look back on later in life and see the conversations that their dad had with people that he respected and admired, but most of all, get the lessons. And now I'm sharing those lessons with you and the reasons that people have done things, the ambition, the passion, and the hardship and their vulnerabilities. And I actually really enjoy it. This is one of the most special times as I get to sit down with people that I really would love to chat to and ask them the questions that are burning in my mind. If you are the same as me and you're pushing the limits and the edges of what you do, please like and subscribe to the show. It helps me tremendously to get new guests on the show and expand that reach so we can help more people together. Okay, today I am joined by someone who truly lives and breathes negotiation and influence. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about Giuseppe Conti. And he is and has led commercial and procurement teams for some of the biggest multinationals out there. I'm talking about Procter Gamble, Novartis, and many others. And now he teaches negotiation at Europe's top business schools, not just one, many, while running Conti Advanced Business Learning, a training firm that's shaping the next generation of leaders. He's now known not just for his frameworks, but his human and ethical and deeply practical approach to influence. For all you tuning in, ambitious professionals, I know you're in your 30s, your 40s, and even your 50s, you want to elevate your influence and learn how to lead and negotiate under pressure. And this conversation will change how you see power. Giuseppe Conti, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Tim. A real pleasure on my side also to talk to a fellow negotiation expert. You were one of the top 30 global guru in negotiation in the world. So, that's a recognition of your expertise in this field, as well as in many others. So, real pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be with the number one global guru for negotiation. And yeah, I'm so glad that we can do this. So thinking through, like you've had an amazing personal journey. You've shifted from senior procurement and commercial roles into major multinationals, and I think you've seen it all. And now you've founded CABL, so Conti Advanced Business Learning, and you're teaching at the top business schools in Europe. Like it's amazing and well regarded. Like, I love this. What was the inflection point though? That's what I'm kind of drawn to. Like when you realized that it wasn't just about being a commercial leader and you felt drawn to go and teach and master negotiation and influence.
Well, Tim, I may disappoint you, but it was not a vision. It's not that I was already anticipating this will happen. It just came with the flow, in the sense that I started being an internal trainer when I was at P&G on top of my job. Then I had the first opportunity to teach at university in 2005. University of Geneva. Then in 2006, I started at Bocconi and in IMD. 2008, INSEAD, the London Business School. 2009, Oxford. Little by little, my teaching activity kept growing. I enjoyed it, but I continued my corporate job. I was doing both elements. To be open with you, my wife was risk adverse. So she said, keep your corporate job. We have 3 kids going to private school. Don't make crazy things. But, my teaching activity kept growing and I saw the passion growing. And maybe, there is a bit of DNA because my father was a teacher, my mother a teacher, my first sister a teacher, my second sister a teacher. My first sister was a fashion designer, but was also teaching fashion. So somehow, there was something in me that had to move in that direction and became a growing passion. And then when the kids became older, then it was the right timing, to leave the corporate world and fully dedicated to teaching and training.
I love that. So going with the flow whilst appeasing the wife. Giuseppe, I need to take some lessons from your book because I think that's exactly the situation that I'm in. It's about balancing and moving through because there's so much opportunity, right? And when it comes at you, you want to do it all. And I feel like you have. Like some of those business schools that you mentioned, like these are the top in the world business schools. Wow, we're so honored to have you with us. So your company or your tagline is crafting experts in negotiation and influence. But for you, what separates an expert from a good negotiator? Like what's the difference?
Yeah, well, I will say that, a good negotiator knows all the techniques. And I know he has been reading books, he has attending workshop, etc. By the way, I loved your book, Tim. So, I highly recommend your book because, it's very, very good quality. And, they have read the books, they know the things, and they understand, the right things to do. Then an expert is somebody that is able to use the right techniques, the right tools in the right context, with the right people, with the right culture, with the right emotions that are taking place into the real negotiation. So, there is a piece that happens in the training, with the
Mhm.
feedback, with, helping the people uh, understand in different contexts. And then there is also an element, a journey that the expert negotiation, takes on their own when they take the habits of reflecting on their own experience and understanding what's happening, what didn't happen. So, it is an ongoing journey.
It's not, and was there a moment when you realized that negotiation was less about these tactics and more about mindset? Did that ever sort of trigger in that sense?
Well, it's interesting that you talk about mindset because actually, the first chapter of my book, Negotiation plus Influence equals Success, that was published in September, is really about, the changing mindset. And I see so many negative stereotypes about negotiation and influencing, people looking at it, oh, it's only about compromise. So maybe, it's just win-lose, try to
Mm.
the fixed pie mindset. I have to try to grab the biggest part for myself. Even worse for influencing, because in a number of languages, French and German, for instance, there is a confusion between influence and manipulation. So when
Ah,
you talk about influence, people immediately say, no, no, no. Do you want to come to my influencing workshop? No, no, I don't do those things, right? So there are
but
there are a number of negative association with negotiation and influence. Now, the beauty is that, if you approach negotiation and influence with the right mindset, then it actually helps you to build better relationships.
mhm.
In fact, I am so lucky in my life that I have great relationship with my daughter, with my sister, with my team members. So, you know, to some extent, the soft skills that I developed in my job help me to get along very well with the people around me.
That's it. It pervades all areas. There's almost no boundaries to negotiation and influence. But that's a really good point, actually. I hadn't really considered that influence could be perceived negatively in different languages across cultures because of what it means to the other person and what that skill set would be doing.
Exactly. Because the techniques are the same, right? What changes is the intent, right? I'm not in manipulation, of course, I'm trying to get you to do something which is good for me and bad for you.
Mm.
While, in influencing, we are trying to get somebody to do something which is good for them, good for us, good for the company, right? It's a mutual process of influencing, and we're going to continue to work together to make it work effectively, right? So, the techniques are there, but the way you use that, the mindset that you have makes the difference.
That's a really important point, Giuseppe. Like you've literally hit the nail on the head. The part there is, and for those that missed it, was it's intent, right? It's your intention. If your intention is to take or to trick, that's manipulation. If it's to give and to serve and to create value, right, we've
Yeah.
got influence on our hands. I like the book because I mean, everyone should run out and buy a copy of the book, Negotiation plus Influence equals Success. Definitely go out and get this book because negotiation, super important, influence, super important. And given your top record, like you've got a massive record of top business schools there, I'm sure there's a lot of misconceptions that are there when you're talking to students about negotiation when they come through the door to begin. Is that what you wanted to address with the book? Was there like what are students thinking about negotiation when they're coming into Giuseppe Conte's class on negotiation?
Well, the one thing that I see is that there is very often a win-lose mindset, a
Mm,
willingness to claim value, especially when they do rated role play, right? I do the role play, and then, part of the evaluation, there are different elements when you do your MBA or an executive MBA, there are different elements which are part of the evaluation. And, one of them may be a rated role play or two role plays where people, get marks on how they negotiate. And especially in those kind of situation, then the focus is, okay, I have to win and the other party lose. Even if the evaluation may be a forced ranking where you're comparing, let's say, all the salespeople and all the buyers. So you're not really competing with your person opposite. You are competing with the other person that have the same role, but somehow, there is this bias which we inherited over many years, that negotiation is about, trying to get the bigger part of the pie. And this
mm.
prevents from enlarging the pie, and there are a number of opportunities which are missed on the way.
Wow, that's cool. I say, even though you might be teaching or haven't started teaching your class yet, that's the first bias you see. People are there going, I want this to be a distributive negotiation. I'm not going to make this collaborative gesture. I'm not going to, I don't know, get reciprocity going or try to expand this pie. That's great. So you see that playing out in your business school classes.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
So what are the core tenets of influence in your mind when it comes to influence?
Well, the core ones. I will say I will start with look at the deal from the perspective of the other party. I think, that's a good starting point, trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to see what is important to them. Uh, Another classic is probably preparation, right?
Mhm.
We heard it many times, but let's say if you're looking for the core tenants, I would say preparation should be there. And maybe, if I may, another one goes back to an old classic, since we talked about successful books like yours, then uh, going back to the 7 habits of highly effective people,
Mhm.
seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think, it was one of the pillars for success that Stephen Covey outlined in his book, and it remains very valid in so many aspects of life, right? So when you try to influence, I put a lot of focus on question and on listening before we talk about what you're gonna say.
That can be quite hard because we can go in with the intention to do that into a conversation, and then someone triggers us. And literally, even though we've got that in our mind, I'm going to listen first, the emotions come up and it's like an eruption of, I don't know, we have to speak or we have to, it's just a quick, and we give away our influence in that moment. Like, how do we counter that? Like, how do we actually put that seek first to understand into practice?
Uh, Now, there is the classical rule. You have 2 ears and one mouth, use it accordingly. So, get people to think that, that's the best way to approach any influencing or negotiation. By the way, if I know that you deal a lot with salespeople, there was an interesting statistic also for salespeople. An insurance company in the US registered thousands of calls of their people to try to understand what was leading to success in sales, what was not leading to success. They measure a number of parameters. One of them was the amount of talking time and the amount of listening time. And the ideal ratio to sell for this insurance company for this study was 43% talking, 57% listening. So, if you want to sell more, you have to listen more. So, but of course, then there is the human willingness. We all like our voice. We all like to talk. So remember yourself, maybe you put a post-it, there are lots of things happening virtually. Maybe, you put a on a post-it on your laptop that reminds you, right, that you want to spend more time listening than talking.
That's a good idea. Just having those percentages put somewhere strategically so you can remember 57% listening.
That's what is going to help you to sell. Yeah.
And I think then my question would be, okay, we're out. That's external facing. What about internal when we're dealing with internal stakeholders who maybe our guard is a little bit more down because, or even actually if they're combative, if they're not, if they're objective to our ideas, they don't necessarily want to. How do we influence an internal stakeholder? Because that is something I think if you're going to master the game of influence, that is something you want to be able to do.
Yeah, and by the way, a lot of my corporate customers are large multinationals, and the larger the organization, the more the people tell me that the internal influencing is more difficult than the external negotiation. So I think, this, what you're saying is it continues to be confirmed on a constant basis from the people at my corporate customer. Now, how can we do better at internal influence? Now, it starts with profiling. And by the way, even the most senior people that I'm working with, they tell me that they don't do the profiling enough, which means, I have this meeting with the executive vice president. Before I go and have this meeting, do my research. Try to understand not only, the public, of course, you can do the chat GPT, the Google search, the LinkedIn profile, and those kind of things. Then you go into intranet and you may find some information about the goals of that person and those kind of things. But then, when you talk to people, I'm still an old school person that likes to talk to people and find out information from human beings. Maybe, if you talk to people in their teams with whom you have a good relationship, not only you can discover about their communication styles, their hobby, or other kind of personal triggers, but you may also get some hidden information that you're never going to find on Google or LinkedIn. They may tell you, watch out, Bill and James hate each other. So, don't ever use Bill as a reference for James because this is not going to work out. Or maybe, they tell you, listen, Margaret is going through a divorce for the time being. So, she's just, doing the strict minimum because she has to sort out her private life. So maybe it's not a good moment to suggest this initiative, those kind of things. So those kind of in-depth profiling about the person that you're dealing is certainly something that is going to help.
And am I looking for commonalities when is that what I'm looking to draw out when I find some, oh, we lived in the same city, or what is it?
Absolutely. When you have done the research and then, you discover that the person worked at P&G, then you mention that you worked at P&G. You mention that they know that they play tennis, then you mention they play tennis, so that you have 3 daughters, they have 3 daughters, or whatever, and then that's create certainly a solid basis to work better together.
How far can you take it though? I mean, I can imagine somebody listening to that and going, okay, that sounds easy. I'm just going to say that I did everything they did, or like, oh yeah, do you play water polo? Yeah, I play water polo, and then they get asked to go to the water polo game, and they have no. Do you know what I mean? How?
Exactly. So it has to be real. It has to be real
Has to be
commonality.
real.
So the
Okay.
point is,
Yeah.
find for the things, right? Okay, we both worked in the UK, we both worked in the UK, and that's something where you're gonna have real life experience, etc. I'm not gonna pretend that I'm an expert of Romania if I've never been there, and right?
Yeah. Okay. So real, grounded in ethics and authenticity, looking for commonalities and then highlighting them. Because
Exactly.
you teach a
Real
lot
one.
about obviously negotiation and influence and this combined discipline. But thinking about someone in their mid-career and they're aiming to level up their influence, right? They're not just looking to negotiate deals. What would you define as the difference between an influencer and then a negotiator? Not just like as a perspective for somebody who's they're mid-career, like they've had a lot of experience and but they want to get really good at influence. What should they be
Okay.
doing?
Now, so first, to make it simple, we can say that I talk about negotiation for the external piece, and I talk about influencing for the internal piece. Now, is not we know that, of course, there is influencing happen externally, etc., but let's say if we want to try to define the two things, then we say, okay, negotiation, we use it for external, influencing, we use it for the internal. Now, if you tell me that the people are stuck in their company, and then one of the things that certainly helps in dealing with internal stakeholders is reducing resistance. Right?
Mhm.
Very often we focus on increasing our persuasion. Okay, how I'm going to frame this in a way that is going to be, how I'm going to use their language, how I'm going to, whatever, make it look for what's in it for them, etc., which are all good ideas. But very often, if your idea don't go through inside your organization, try to see, what can I do to reduce the resistance that I'm getting from the people I'm working with? And there are a couple of things that help. One is acknowledging the other person's perspective. Acknowledging doesn't mean that you agree, but you say, oh, and I see I understand your point of view. I see why this has led to your action, etc. And the other is asking curious questions.
Mhm.
So, think it over. How can I lower the resistance that I'm getting from one of the internal stakeholders if by using question and by acknowledging their perspective? The other, and that's a more difficult skill, is the ability to read the context. Too many people, they go into the meeting with, let's say, a senior guy, they want to get approval for their project, and they will go in with what they prepared, whatever happens, they're gonna move forward with their approach. Now, the more sophisticated influence, instead, is gonna check, is gonna start by checking already the mood at the beginning. How is
Mm.
going today? Just to understand what is happening. If you get the message, oh, I have a presentation to the president tomorrow morning, I was just working on it, then you understand that probably, is not the right moment, and that they really want to go back to their presentation, maybe better to postpone the meeting to another moment. But also, during the interaction, you try to look, do they look open to my idea, or they look resistant? What is the energy level? You look at small movement of the body, are they moving closer, are they moving farther, to understand, when is the right moment to go in with your idea, or maybe realizing that, today is not the good day, and you should probably go for a mild approach and wait for another moment to go for a full-fledged launch of your idea. So this ability, right, to read the context is not an easy one, and it's a skill that needs to be practiced.
This is so interesting. I can see how all of these things are fundamental and could help you master influence. Like, but it feels like, especially in the world of like high tech sales or fast moving businesses, that the idea or the culture of the organization would say, well, we haven't got time for any of that. And that's missing the point, right? Because then the idea falls flat on its face, and you walk in and you present the idea right before the presentation to the president, and you get a no. And it's like literally just stepping back and looking at, like you said, practicing those skills that may seem soft skills. They make a massive difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if you were mentoring someone in their 40s, say they've got 20 years of experience and they're seeking to become that person, right? The person that people trust and influence and deliver, what would you tell them that are three non-negotiables to master over the next 12 months? Like, what would you say if they were going to become that person that is the go-to person that can influence and deliver, What are the three non-negotiables?
Now, your number three makes me think about the pie model. I don't know if you're familiar with the pie model, but it's a representation that I like to use about three core components that make you successful in organization. And the P is the performance. And I think, everybody knows that, if you are in marketing, you want to increase, the market share. And if you are in R&D, you want to bring more innovation, all those kind, results driven, EBIT, top line, whatever, that are going to have an impact. But there are two other components that are particularly important for your success in a company that will make you, and that's the image. The second one, the second component of the model is the image. So, maybe a 30% of your success is the performance, another 30% is the image, how you are perceived inside the company. Are you seen as a leadership material, or are you seen as an individual contributor? Do you fit with the company culture, or your image doesn't fit? The other 30% of your success is exposure. What kind of job you have. Are you the assistant of the CEO, or you are a brand manager in Kosovo, which, may be doing a great job, but, it's a small country and you don't really have much visibility. Do you have the right mentors? Do you have the right sponsor in particular inside the organization? So, if you want to succeed inside the company, probably you want to work on the three dimensions. By the way, I said 30, 30, 30. There is another 10% missing to be successful, and that's luck. Sometimes you have to be there at the right moment, at the right time. There is somebody that is leaving the company, and you are the only one that can take the vice president job, and then you get it. But of course, you cannot only rely on luck to make this happen.
Today I want to share something that's incredibly close to my heart. It's this book here in my hands. It's The First Domino. I wrote this to help you expand into new markets, to make the most of your first 90 days. Whether it's a new role that you've started, whether it's a new team that you've taken on, or your company has launched a new product or service, or you're just a founder and you really haven't landed that first major client yet. Imagine this, you're starting a new job and you're sitting down and you're opening up your computer and you've got 43 new Slack messages, a ton of new emails and content that you've got to learn. The pressure's on. Not only that, but you've got to go out and you've got to meet all these new people, these new staff members, these new clients. But most of all, you've got to add value. And whether you acknowledge it or not, you know the pressure is on. You know that this time is precious and that this company has brought you on for a reason. And you're there to prove that reason. That's one of the reasons I wrote this book. It's something that you can read on the weekend and implement on Monday to guide that process so that you can systematize the process of excelling and bring those trusted relationships forward and move the needle on landing your first major client. This book is going to push you to do anything but be comfortable. It's going to help you get breakthroughs. If we tip that first domino, we're going to get a chain reaction of success. That's why I wrote it. It's a playbook to understand the psychology of sales, the intelligence that you need to build leverage into your sales process. And it's for anyone that wants to do business development, growth, or just build their personal brand and take ownership of the direction of their career, their money, and their life. When you land that first domino, that first major client, I want you to post it up and tag me. If you are bold enough to take on the challenge, to really put it into action, to lead with heart, I promise you, you will change your stars. So if you're looking to create a generational legacy and make an impact, this is the first domino, and it only takes one. You're so right, because we'd automatically focus on performance, but actually image and then exposure. So even if you have the image, but you've not got the exposure, then you've not got the reach to kind of get the message out there. If you've got the performance, but you haven't got the exposure, then you're a dead duck. So you need all three in sync and a bit of luck, and you're gonna absolutely rock it up. This is great. You can start to see how that could play out in not just in like in any situation, right? In job interviews, in your brand, just as a personal brand, getting the next deal, getting a teaching job, whatever it is, right? It's image, exposure. Like they need to know that you're there and what kind of remit you have and reach you have, and then And then performance, can you do what you say you can do? Like, it's so cool. This is great. This is great, Giuseppe, adding so much value here.
Thank
So
you.
you've done hundreds of workshops, you've seen hundreds of workshops, you've seen hundreds of leaders. Like, what would be the thing that you would say separates those that get influence from those that never quite do?
Well, certainly, a strong foundation are the soft skills of the person that you're dealing with. So in particular, emotional intelligence, right? Especially with influence, right? There is a lot of emotional element that happen during the interaction. This may also involve, as we were mentioned before, the ability to read people and to adapt to different circumstances. Uh, I will also say that another element is the implementation. There are many motivated people that come to the workshop and they say, okay, I got it, I understand, etc., etc. Now, too many fail to follow through. So, if you actually want to become one of those persons that get it and that not only get it but applies on a consistent basis, then you have really to follow through. You have to define specific action for yourself and work on it immediately. So let's say you realize that you want to ask a curious question, and because this is going to help you to reduce the resistance of your stakeholders, then what you do, you say, okay, in the next meeting with the boss of my boss, I'm going to ask at least 5 open-ended questions, starting with how and what. Right? This is very concrete kind of things where, you work on a specific topic for a limited period of time, but then, you practice your skills and you become better and better.
That's really important. Yeah, you put it into action. You define that next step. So put the course the training into action and keep working on it, man. Yeah. So and we've touched on this a little bit. Like inside corporations, the real battles, as we know, they're internal and they're really about influencing left, right, up, down, all over the place. Like, and it isn't always where you've got authority to, like, from a status within the company perception to do that, but you can still influence. Like, what's your best advice to be able to do that? Because you do need buy-in from, sidewards companions, influencing
Yeah.
from stakeholders, of course, upward to your manager and their boss, and all the way up. You need to give that clear direction. But what's your advice for that kind of dynamic?
Okay. Now, of course, we could talk for 1 hour just on this question.
Yeah,
Maybe, a starting point. A starting point is probably to be perceived as a trustworthy person. And when I talk about being trustworthy, there is one model that I like very much. It has been around for 24 years because it was published in 2001, but it still remains relevant, is the trust equation. So if you think about how trustworthy you are perceived by the people you're interacting with, think about those components. The trust equation says that how trustworthy you are comes from credibility plus reliability plus intimacy divided by self-orientation. So, quickly, credibility in the world of business is very much about competence. You know the market, you know your customer, you know the supplier, or whatever. Reliability is keeping the promises, walking the talk. You tell your boss, I'm going to finish the report by Wednesday, and you really finish it by Wednesday. Intimacy is the quality of the relationship that you build with the people. By the way, since you are based in Asia and I'm based in Europe, if we look at those 3 components, we also know that there is a cultural element, right? The Western culture is more into credibility and reliability, while, a number of the Asian culture, whether Indian, Japanese, Chinese, they put more focuses on the intimacy, let's say, on the quality of the relationship. Negative impact on being perceived trustworthiness, self-orientation. Self-orientation means that the people perceive that you only care about your goals and you do not care enough about the other person's goal. Let me explain, because I made this mistake many times. When I was in procurement, right, I spent a good part of my career in procurement, And when I was in procurement, my typical approach would be to go and talk to the internal stakeholder and talk about, okay, let's do this. We are going to save $500,000. So I was talking about my goal, the cost saving, which was important for procurement. I think, the better approach, if you want to be perceived as trustworthy by your internal stakeholder, if you're talking to an R&D guy, you talk about this is going to help with innovation. If you're talking with a supply chain guy, talk about this is going to help with on time and in full. If you talk with the salespeople, how this is going to help us, build greater relationship with our customer, etc., etc. So don't be seen as the guy who only cares about themselves.
That's a really cool equation. I was just trying to do the maths, but yeah, if it was like only care about myself, that would mean I was 100% or 100 in at the extreme of the spectrum. Therefore, the whatever numbers were at the top divided by 100 would fragment it the most, which is trust, right? So trust
Exactly.
is now divided into 100 parts versus if I was on the other spectrum, like I guess one into it would be the other way, 100% trust. So it's off whatever number. Yeah, 100%, 100%. Yeah, so it'd be one. So I'd get 100% trust. I
Yeah.
like that equation. Wow, good. Yeah, I can see how that works. But this is the thing, right? You've worked in procurement for some of the biggest companies, and that means you've been at the coalface, right? That's what I love about you, Giuseppe. You've walked the walk. You've worked in corporate. You've then taught to students, and now you've got your own negotiation training academy. But what are some of the main objectives and responsibilities of procurement teams, just for the audience to understand what that job is and what they're thinking, and what the KPI is almost for a procurement
Exactly.
team?
Now, it's interesting that you talk about KPI because, right, officially what procurement organization should be doing is choosing the best supplier based on total cost of ownership, the total value that the different supplier may bring to the organization. And of course, this involves quality, service, sustainability, innovation capability, and all those kind of parameters. Now, when it boils down to KPI, I can tell you that when I started my procurement career, February 1994, the number one KPI for procurement was cost saving. Now going to 2025, the number one KPI for procurement is cost saving.
Ta-da!
So inevitably, although there is in principle a philosophy and approach about what we should be doing, then if the way you get married and you get your bonus is cost saving, then guess what is going to drive the behavior of procurement people?
Mhm.
Cost saving. Now it becomes an opportunity also for salespeople, because of course once you know that your counterpart is driven by cost, but by the cost saving, then you say, okay, maybe I can use this opportunity to have a longer term contract. We can make a deal where I offer price, but then I get a long term contract. Or maybe, I can get, a collaboration with R&D, or I can get, some more marketing insight, or I can, so recognizing that your counterpart is going to be driven by this factor may open up opportunities for finding other ways to leverage.
That's really cool. Like putting yourself again, using your words, understanding what the other side wants, because yeah, if you can get to that and you can start to offer it on the table. But what are some of the levers that procurement can pull then on their side? Like what levers do you have at your disposal to pull to negotiate with?
Now, the procurement people have a reputation for being, quite rough and tough in the
Yeah,
way they do it. So, the typical approach of most no, not most, but today a good number of procurement people is just, using the leverage that, I am the buyer, I have the money, and, you have to do better than that. Or there are other people that they can do better than that. Remember that there was one procurement director in France that used this trick. He had a pile of paper he will put it on the table and he will say, I have another supplier who is offering me 12% lower prices. If you don't give me 12% lower, then, you're out of here today. This kind of, hard tactic, competitive approach that have been part of the procurement role for a number of times. Now, if you look at the modern procurement people, then of course, they should be looking into how do we bring creativity? How do we find trades to make sure that not only I have a great deal, but also my supplier is satisfied. And by the way, interesting enough, the satisfaction of the supplier is more linked to the process than to the outcome.
Wow.
What do I mean is that there is a result that you're going to get as a result of the negotiation, but the way you get the result is going to have a big impact on the satisfaction. So, if you have attained your results by making the other party lose face, by having an aggressive approach, etc., then, they're not going to be very willing to do business with you again. But if you were giving good explanation, if you were listening to them, if you were maybe, starting low and make them work for every concession they get. That's also part of the satisfaction, right? Making the other party work for the concession they get. You may still get your results, but you get it while making the other party satisfied. So, think of, there is a Bill Urey that used to say, listening is the easiest concession that you can make. So, respecting people, listening, these are very simple tools that procurement and salespeople can use in their negotiation to create the right ambience with other people while defending, the stake. I'm not saying that, you're just leaving value on the table.
That's cool. Does that work then? Is that really that you would enjoy the journey more if you had to work for the concessions from the other side? You'd look back on that as a favorable process, and therefore you'd feel great about what you negotiated
Exactly. The same
because they made you
result.
work for it.
Let's say, imagine this. Imagine that, we are negotiating, and then you will tell me, I want to be paid up front, all in cash. No problems, we can do it. Right? If I do, that's one thing. Another thing is, oh boy, you want to be paid up front, all in cash. Wow, that's quite a big demand. I guess, I will have to get approval from finance to do this, but, this, I really have to make a deal that will justify it. Right? So you see,
There's a
if you
completely
say, no problem, we can do it, the outcome is the same, but the way the people feel once they got it is going to be substantially different.
and they feel like, and actually it lowers the value of that exchange. I don't feel as not just excited, I don't almost value it as much, the fact that you paid in cash, whereas when you make me work for it, oh my goodness, I can see you bent over backwards, you went to your finance, you are now on side with me, you're now a companion, we're now friends in a new way, and I feel like there's a completely different sense of ownership and value I assign to that. Oh, I got paid in cash by those guys. I now have a great relationship with them.
Exactly.
So what do you think then is what is your negotiation philosophy? Because obviously we talk to a lot of negotiation experts in our work. What's yours, and do you believe in win-win?
Now, I believe that win-win is a bit an obsolete content. And first of all, win-win doesn't mean that, everybody takes 50% of the pie, right? Or those kind of things. I believe the good negotiator should be able to do both. Create value, so, make the pie bigger to make sure that, there is enough for everyone. And this, involves creative solution, involves making smart trades and those kind of things. But then, the good negotiator should also be able to claim value. So it's not enough to say, we made a big pie and now the other party runs away with it, or we're just going to split it 50-50. Let's say the good negotiator should also be able to claim a good part of the pie, so that if you are able to do both, creating value, make it bigger, and claiming a good part of this pie, you make it good for them and great for us. So that will be my philosophy, right? Good for them and great for us. Don't just be fighting on the price and try to make it a win-lose, but first make sure that, you have a lot of opportunities and make the other party feel great. And then, make sure that you also grab a good amount of this money. By the way, and the challenge of creating and claiming value are big, right? In fact, we call it the negotiation dilemma. We call it the negotiation dilemma because the two things may be in contradiction,
Correct.
right? If I am focusing on claiming value, I am very close, I never reply to your question, etc., then it's going to be difficult to find opportunity for creating value. But on the other side, if I'm extremely open and I tell you, oh, Tim, for me, the cost of this is 500, then guess what? You're going to pay me 501 because, because
Yeah.
then you take advantage of it. So that's where, the challenge of creating and claiming value is a sophisticated one.
I love it, Giuseppe. I love your tag. I love this tagline of an ethos. It's good for you and great for us. I mean, that is amazing. I love that. Okay. So we got that. And just say we have this philosophy, good for them, great for us. That's what how do you align internal stakeholders so that we're all singing off the same hymn sheet? Because I've been in negotiations where you walk in and there's a team and then someone will start saying, and you're like, oh, hello, I didn't really, you're the lead negotiator. And then someone over there starts talking and they're going off and they're giving all sorts of detail away that you hadn't even agreed to. How do you align beforehand?
Now, my philosophy is invite many people in the preparation of the negotiation phase. Do not invite many people at the negotiation table. So, right, so I think, something that we often miss is not involving enough our colleagues in the preparation phase. Because, if you do involve the different colleagues, then you understand what is value in the company. Once, at the table, you have the marketing person, you have the R&D person, you have the manufacturing person, then you can really understand what are the different perspectives, and therefore, you see what will be really important for the company to obtain during this negotiation. Then, when it comes to the negotiation table, there is a high risk, like you mentioned, that, if you invite people at the table, they ended up giving away. So, and I think, we all have our horror story of somebody revealing the budget, or somebody revealing that they were the only supplier and those kind of things. And then you ended up being stuck in a difficult. Now, by the way, if you do bring somebody at the negotiation table, my personal trick, what I did when I was in a corporate role is I will give them a role. So rather than say, Tim, shut up because I'm going to be the lead negotiator, you say, Tim, as I will be leading the negotiation, I often struggle to pay attention to the body language of the other person and to take good notes. Can we agree that you will be the note taker and the body language observer while I will be leading the negotiation?
Yes,
And
Giuseppe.
then, you give
I'm
a
all in.
meaningful role. You give a meaningful role to the other person, and that's reduce the risk that
I like it.
they're gonna give away something during the
Assign the
negotiation.
role. Assign the role beforehand. Reduce the
Exactly.
risk. Nothing's given away. Giuseppe's in the main seat negotiating away. So I love what you've done, and I've loved researching for this, but I've also loved building a relationship with you here today on the podcast. When we think about the fact that you've literally architected a training program for leaders so that they don't just learn negotiation, but they embed it into daily decisions and their behaviors, which is what you want them to do, right? To your earlier point, you want them to have a next step and an action to put into practice, right? Like, how do you come up with a training program like that? What's your philosophy there?
Now, if I want to make sure that my training has an impact, then I have to force the implementation. I have to encourage them, to do the implementation. And, there are probably a number of things that a number of trainers do, like, making sure that people have an action plan at the end of the training. Also, giving good practice about what is needed, what is going to help you, to ensure that the implementation takes place, do this, and those kind of things. And then, a number of things happen after the training. And this is, the kind of things that we do and that the company does. So, on my side, I will have, a monthly video, a monthly article. We have webinars, we have live events, we have coaching, etc., so that, we'll continue to help the people succeed. But let's face it, another part of the success is really linked to what the company is going to do to ensure that the things are implemented. Because, if all the stimuli are external, but inside the company, nobody cares about you becoming a better negotiator, you're quickly going to lose interest. You're quickly going to end up, being driven by the next initiative of the day. So that's where we also give a set of guidance to our internal stakeholders about, what they're going to do to make sure that things happen. And maybe things as simple as, okay, let's set some guidelines so that above a certain spend, people have to prepare the negotiation in writing. For instance, if we say that preparation is such an important point, let's have some guidelines inside the company that says, for every negotiation above X amount of dollars, then you're going to prepare in writing. And if the amount is bigger, then you're going to prepare in writing and role play it with the colleagues, etc., etc. Then there are plenty of other tips and hints that we share with our customers. And then we have to see, based on the company culture, what fits. Right, certain culture company are more directive and they're gonna set another kind of things. Other company are more like a softer approach. Then it's gonna be things that are more like collaborative, like inviting the young people to the negotiation with the senior people so that they get to learn by observing more experienced negotiator, for instance, those kind of things that will also help people implement.
I see. So you tailor the implementation steps to the companies themselves, but you make sure that it can be
I give plenty of
formalized.
ideas,
Yeah.
but then, we have to discuss together about, what makes sense, what they're prepared to do.
Yeah. And you've got something coming up in Singapore. You're coming to Singapore, Giuseppe. What's that all about?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Singapore the 4th and 5th of February, and I have a workshop which is specific for procurement and supply chain people. We call it leading edge negotiation for procurement and supply chain. Is going to be the 4th and 5th of February. And maybe we can put the link to the program, to this episode, for the people that may be interested in this. But Singapore, I love Singapore. I'm coming 3 times a year, and yeah, looking for. In fact, I'm gonna be spending 5 weeks in Southeast Asia in January and February. So it's an area which I appreciate very much.
Oh, I love it, Giuseppe. We'll have you over for dinner. You can come over and we can discuss negotiation even further.
And only negotiation, right? Because you're such a nice person, Tim, that I would love to have a broader discussion with you.
I would love it too. I mean, you're Italian. You're Italian, but you live in Switzerland.
That's correct. Yeah, exactly.
Italy is also a place close to my heart. We were in Switzerland for summer, but Italy, we did Italy and Switzerland, and they were both gorgeous. They're both beautiful places. So back to the topics. If you could undo, I'm just thinking, like, we've had all the things you can do, but what about mistakes you see happening for mid-career professionals? Like, what common influence mistake do you see happening that you would undo if you could? What would it be?
I think, probably the most common mistake is approaching negotiation and influencing with a self-centered approach.
Mhm.
You look at the negotiation, you think my goals, my question, my arguments, my. And if we just could change that and get people to think that, you're unlikely not to push the other person to buy into your ideas, but, you're going to be more successful if you're going to pull them into
Mm.
do this. And sometimes, uh, if you're working, for Johnson and Johnson, for Apple, for Carrefour or Walmart, you may just, push to the people, and people will just accept because you're so big, you're so important that I really want to close a deal with you. But if you now start thinking about the internal dynamics and you go with your push approach and you try to, I want this no matter what, then, that's going to be the easiest route to be moved away, avoided by your colleagues, and not being appreciated by the people around you.
That's such a big insight. Like you cannot avoid learning the skills because you're going to need them internally, regardless of if you're the big dog in town or you work at the Google or the Amazon and sales just come to you or orders. When you go internally, you're not. So you need to
You
know
know,
these skills. Yeah. That's yeah.
exactly.
So it goes back to what you were saying about trust building and trust effectively not being self-centered. And if you could just fix that one thing, it would open up it would amplify and multiply your influence. That leads me on to your book, which is amazing. Negotiation plus influence equals success. It's been taking the world by storm over the last few months. How long's it been out? Two months now?
2 months, yeah, 2 months. And I'm happy that it became bestseller in Germany, in France, and in Italy. It was a top new release in the US. So yeah, I'm
Hitting
happy.
all the
Of course,
scores. Yeah.
is the word of negotiation, right? It's not a novel that, million of people will be reading, but, for the people in our field, I think, it's doing well.
Well, let's hope for 1 million, Giuseppe. Let's do it. Like, what was your goal with the book? What was your goal when you thought about writing that book?
I think, just leaving a legacy.
Oh, I love it.
Um, I would say that I am more a talker than a writer. English is not my mother tongue, so inevitably there was a lot of resistance in me into going into writing a book because of the challenges that will involve. But I will say, I was in the global guru like you. I was in the ranking like, the best negotiator, and everybody else had written a book. I said, okay, I better, of course, I have written articles.
Mm.
I do publish a new article every month, but it was the moment also to put things into a book. Yeah.
I think it's great. And what I love about it, and I think the audience will love too, is there's 68 very short chapters, and that's the point, right? You can literally grab a new negotiation technique or challenge and understand, and then you point to different articles and videos within the book, right? If they want to explore more. But why should someone get this book, and what would it do for their team?
Again, so let me first explain how the book works, right? You mentioned about the 68 paragraphs. So the idea is a 1 point lesson, you know, one topic, one things, a few concrete ideas about, I don't know, you are cross-cultural negotiation, team dynamics, using framing to influence or whatever, right? So there are a few specific ideas. And then, if people after reading, a couple of pages on the topic, they wanted to have more, for each paragraph, there is one article and one book in the book website. So people can go into the book website and they can get more if they want to go deeper into a topic, then there is one article and one book one article and one video that enable you to go deeper into a topic. So it's an opportunity to have some uh, simple advice, concrete advice, very specific, lots of concrete ideas on a wide variety of topic, and then an opportunity to go deeper on the topics which are relevant. So it can also become, if you give it, for instance, as a Christmas present to
Mm.
your team, it can become a sort of a reference, because when next time they are going, oh, single source supply, then, they look at the book, single source supply, and then, there are a few concrete things you're going to do. Getting out of a deadlock, and then, there are the 8 concrete strategies to get out of a deadlock. So a simple concrete book based on practice, right? There are lots of real life examples from my own experience that are reported into the book.
You heard it here first. The Secret Santa gift, the best it could be, negotiation plus influence equals success. I think people should let us know in the comments once they've done that. They should buy it for a Secret Santa gift, give it to their team, and then tell us the stories of success once they've implemented it. Because I love those kind of books. Those books that you can literally flick through a couple of pages and really get that hit, that juice that you need to go and crush a negotiation, but from that sense of it's going to really ground you in the foundational understanding of negotiation when that high pressure situation's on, not letting your emotions run away with themselves. And again, like I think you run 2 very, very popular workshops, leading edge negotiation and influencing with integrity. And now we're in this new world, Giuseppe. We've got new frontiers. It's negotiation, it's AI, it's like from your vantage point, how has negotiation changed, or how must it change in the age of AI and hybrid work, and with now this global supply chain? Like, how has that happened?
Now, I think, the biggest change is really AI. AI is transforming the way we work, and I believe it's going to change, so many things in our daily life. And so starting with negotiation, for instance, one of the things that we have is we have our own preparation template, but now we have also an AI prompt that you put the prompt and immediately fills the preparation template for you.
Oh, beautiful.
So, that's makes it simplifies the task. Now, the temptation, of course, which is the temptation that you stop doing the work,
Mhm.
right? Okay, the AI has already filled me the template, good, let me go. While, of course, if we do this, then, then we are just letting our brain become weaker. We're going to lose our creativity. We're just going to rely on what the AI is doing. So there is this healthy balance of leveraging the idea from AI to broaden our approach while remaining in charge. Now, one of the things that we are working on is the AI agents for negotiation, right? A sparring partner that is going to help you, to practice your negotiation and to get better. When we do our role plays, we have, negotiating with a chatbot as part of the pre-work. We have negotiation that you do with people that are then analyzed with our own AI system, which gives feedback to the people. Even when we are not there, it gives feedback to the people that are negotiating so that everybody runs away with some feedback on how they are negotiating. So, there are plenty of frontiers there that are changing on a daily basis. So, and by the way, maybe not mention too many, because, if people are going to listen to the podcast 1 year from now, they say, oh, they're so obsolete.
Yeah, let's not call so
And
many
of
out.
course, because, it changes every month, it changes every
Rapidly.
month. And we're really doing a lot of work to stay updated and to try to bring the latest to the people that do our workshops. Yeah.
I love what you're doing. And so when you train in cross-cultural environments, different languages, different continents, what's one key insight about culture plus negotiation that you think leaders overlook?
Well, there are lots of dimensions, right? Say from a cultural point of view that they come in. I will say, in being British, we can have fun with it. Is direct versus indirect communication, right?
Yes,
Let's
guilty.
face it, right? Because there are people that come from direct culture that they will tell you the things straight. They will outline every single thing. Um, when I go to the US, I'm always shocked how they write everything. It is hot. Yeah, no, we are getting coffee. Of course, I know that I know that the coffee is hot. Even that flushing the toilets, it tells you, if you flush this toilet, it's 1.6 gallon. If you flush this toilet, it's 0.8 gallons. Okay, right. The small and the small button, to flush the toilet. But when it comes down to negotiation, right? If you are from a direct communication culture and you expect that you're getting a same direct communication from the other ones, then you're going to be in trouble, right? When you negotiate with the Japanese,
I was going to
you're going to
say,
get your
oh my goodness.
and you think, okay, I got my deal. While, they just tell you that they understand. Or, if I made him, maybe dealing with a British, they will tell you, that's an interesting idea. Oh, wow,
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, they like it.
yeah.
No, no,
No, it's
bullshit.
yes, correct. That's very interesting. And then I'll have to take it. I'll take it back, and I'll go and find out for you. And it's not happening. No. No. Yeah, we're very polite, the British. Like
Exactly.
very polite, and I see this a lot. Obviously, working with US companies, like the idea that like your Japan example is spot on. Like just the length and the also thought process is different, right? Short-termism versus
Long
long-term
term.
strategy and approach, and the thought, and even in Singapore, right? The strategic approach and cultural approach from China, even thinking about how it's got a long-term strategy to it. And
Yeah.
so short-term opportunity, it's not gonna sway. Whereas in the US, they're like, come on, let's go. It's Q4. Let's put the foot down. Let's get the sales in. Let's go, go, go. So, I mean, I love it, right? This is what the world's all about. But AI is changing everything, right? Data, transparency, even how people communicate. How will negotiation and influence evolve over the next decade, do you think?
Now, to be honest with you, I'm not optimistic about the impact that AI will have on humankind.
Even long term.
Uh, Even long term.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
I will say, let's say, if you say, in a
Mm,
decade, I'm even worried about how the whole world is going to look in 10 years
mhm,
from now and whether this is going to be our world, right? I think, eh, if you go on YouTube or whatever, you find, the optimist and the pessimist about, AI. And some people say, okay, we're going to eliminate a number of illnesses, and then we're going to have a better, more effective kind of environment, etc., etc. But if you look already at what is happening on the job market,
mhm,
right? And how the younger people are struggling to get those jobs. Now, guess what? The more time by, the more higher level of the organization are going to be impacted. So now they are the entry level that the job are being replaced by the AI, and by just started. In a few years from now, the machine are going to be able to do a number of the things that we are doing. So also, how the world of negotiation and influence is going to change, and how much the machine are taking over, especially if we become lazy, especially if we delegate remember the
mhm,
example I was making.
mhm.
We have now an AI prompt that gives you the basis for the preparation. Now, is never 100% correct. It's going to be 85% correct. You have to challenge them. You have to put your own idea. But as human being, we also know that we choose the path of least resistance. So
Mhm.
if we say, oh, well, that's good enough for me, and then, I think less and I think less, and AI becomes more intelligent, we become less intelligent
I
over
got it.
time, this
It's
may not look good.
yeah, like and I get your point. It's if we lose that creativity muscle, and you've said that word a few times today on today's show, if we lose creativity, the ability to be creative in negotiation because we outsource to AI, meaning that we we lose the muscle. It's like when you don't go to the gym and it I don't know the word, but it goes away, right? And yeah, we have a little bit of muscle memory, but over time, if we extend that out, potentially as a human race, if our creativity is lowered to a point that and AI is obviously goes exponential, suddenly we're getting outplayed by an AI and we don't even know it. And
Exactly.
that is scary. It's a bit dystopian. Yeah, that is and you can see how the fundamentals of human nature allude to the fact that that is pretty much pointed at where we might end up, because you say we choose the path of least resistance because good enough is, it's okay.
Yeah. And the other human factor that doesn't help neither is that the competition between countries, the competition between companies
The race.
is going to put, the race for being the one that is going to dominate the world through AI. It means that the safety concern are put more and more on the side because of trying to be fast. And as a result, we're going to have, those AI faster under control, out of control, that may take us over.
Right. And we haven't even thought or discussed AI in the wrong hands. Like AI in the wrong hand. Like this is AI in good hands.
Exactly right.
There's a whole new, yeah.
AI in bad hands, the security system, they're gonna be able to open all the security system and all those kind of things. And so
Oh my goodness. Yeah, you're
let's see.
yeah.
I don't wanna finish this. I don't wanna
But
finish this podcast on a
on a
negative
high note.
note. But let's face it. Humanity needs to look at AI in a more strategic way and try to see how can we change the situation, because otherwise we may go on the wrong path.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And here's the high note, right? This is why something like Conti Advanced Business Learning is needed, right? Because right now it's more important than ever that you're influencing, because things like AI are coming, taking your jobs, and you're able to influence and say, right, we need ethics and we need to push back on this and we need to have the creativity there. So what does it really stand for in terms of you personally, like your business, and what is the legacy that you're building?
Now, I think, we really wanted to be at the interface between in-depth academic knowledge and real life practice. So, in the company, I have really two group of people that work together: business school professor from Harvard, Yale, London Business School, Oxford, etc., which bring, in-depth expertise, and then a number of practitioner, people that have been vice president of sales, general manager, CPO, etc., that bring the real life expertise. And then we want to combine those two elements, the CPL, so that people really get real life negotiation and influencing that get results, right? So that we want to make sure that we have a company that really helps people obtain better results externally and internally.
Amazing. And Giuseppe, you're coming, for a reminder of everyone else, you're coming to Singapore, February, was it 4th and 5th?
4th and 5th,
2026?
absolutely.
Oh, amazing. We're going to love that. Singapore will roll out the red carpet. We'll make sure of it. Where can people find you, and what action would you like? Where do you want me to point people to, and what action can they take?
Well, let's say they can find me on LinkedIn, Giuseppe Conti. You can find me my website, cabl.ch, if you want to find out a bit. By the way, there is plenty of free material on my website, articles, videos, interviews, podcasts, etc. So, do take the opportunity to go on the website, and then, check the book, Negotiation plus Influence equals Success. You find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, all the kind of major bookstore out there.
We will put all the links in the show notes. Giuseppe, this has been a masterclass in influence. I've loved it. I love your energy. I love your energy. And I know that this was not just about tactics, but about mindset. And I love the humanity behind it. So for everyone listening, please dive deeper. Check out Giuseppe's work. Go to his website, because the articles you put out are phenomenal. And we have to remember that influence isn't just about it's not about control, right? At the end of the day, this is, if we were to frame this up, it's not about control, it's about connection, it's about credibility. I love that piece about dividing by self-interest and just understanding that's how we build trust. I think this has been one of the most amazing conversations, Giuseppe. Really close to my heart. I really do appreciate it.
I loved it as well, Tim. It was such a rich exchange. Thank you very much. And your question are extremely sharp. Really, you get me to think, because, it was not easy to look at the spins that you've taken and really help me, to go deeper to try to help the audience the most. So a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Fantastic, Giuseppe.